Moving into a new neighborhood can be an exciting yet daunting experience, especially when it comes to navigating the complexities of a homeowners association (HOA). One of the most common challenges new residents face is dealing with difficult neighbors, which can create tension and stress in what should be a welcoming environment. In this video, we'll explore the nuances of managing relationships within an HOA, particularly when you encounter a neighbor who seems to have a knack for making life more complicated. It's essential to recognize that every community has its own dynamics, and understanding these can significantly impact your experience as a homeowner. We'll discuss how property rights play a crucial role in these interactions, as knowing your rights can empower you to address conflicts more effectively. The goal here is to provide you with practical strategies and insights that can help you foster a more harmonious living situation. We want to make this topic engaging and relatable, as many of us have faced similar challenges when trying to fit into a new community. By sharing personal anecdotes and expert advice, we aim to equip you with the tools needed to navigate these tricky waters. Whether you're dealing with noise complaints, property disputes, or simply a neighbor who seems overly critical, understanding the underlying community dynamics and your rights can make all the difference. So let's dive in and explore how to turn these challenges into opportunities for building better relationships within your neighborhood. Upon moving into the neighborhood, I had high hopes of finding a friendly community where everyone looked out for one another. However, my expectations quickly shifted when I encountered Karen, the self-appointed HOA dictator. From the moment I met her, it was clear that she took her role very seriously, often positioning herself as the gatekeeper of neighborhood standards. With her meticulously manicured lawn and an arsenal of rules at her disposal, Karen seemed to thrive on enforcing her version of what a perfect community should look like. Her presence was both intimidating and oddly fascinating, as she wielded her influence with a mix of authority and passive-aggressive charm. In our first interaction, I innocently asked about the neighborhood's regulations, hoping to get a warm welcome. Instead, Karen launched into a lengthy monologue about the importance of maintaining property values, peppered with subtle jabs about those who don't follow the rules. It became apparent that her tactics were less about fostering community spirit and more about instilling fear. She would often leave notes on my door, critiquing my lawn care or the placement of my outdoor furniture, all while maintaining a facade of concern for the neighborhood. These passive-aggressive tactics left me feeling uneasy, as if I were constantly under scrutiny. Karen's behavior not only set the tone for my experience in the community, but also highlighted the challenges of navigating relationships with those who take their roles too seriously. It was clear that living here would require more than just following the rules. It would demand a careful dance around Karen's whims. As my time in the neighborhood progressed, I found myself on the receiving end of a barrage of complaints and warnings from Karen. It started innocently enough, with her first note citing my lawn's unacceptable height. I promptly mowed it, thinking I was simply adhering to community standards. However, that was just the beginning. Soon after, I received another note, this time regarding the color of my front door, which she deemed too vibrant for the neighborhood aesthetic. I complied, painting it a more muted shade, hoping to appease her. But Karen didn't stop there. She began to nitpick every aspect of my property, claiming my flower pots were cluttering the porch and that my choice of outdoor furniture was inconsistent with community guidelines. Each complaint felt more absurd than the last. Yet I found myself bending over backward to meet her demands, fearing the repercussions of defiance. The final straw came when she chastised me for leaving my trash bins out for an extra hour after collection day, insisting it was a blight on the neighborhood. These complaints highlighted Karen's overreach and her obsession with control. It was as if she thrived on finding fault, turning minor infractions into major offenses. I began to realize that her relentless scrutiny was less about maintaining property values and more about exerting her authority. The absurdity of her complaints made me question whether I was living in a neighborhood or under a dictatorship, and I started to wonder how much longer I could tolerate her incessant meddling. One afternoon, as I returned home from work, I was greeted by an envelope taped to my front door. My heart sank as I recognized the familiar handwriting. It was from the HOA. Upon opening it, I was shocked to find an eviction notice, citing a series of alleged infractions that had escalated to this drastic measure. The notice claimed that my property was in violation of multiple HOA rules, including the infamous complaints from Karen about my lawn and outdoor decor. The implications were staggering. I was being told to vacate my home, a place I had invested so much time and effort into making my own. As I read through the notice, a wave of realization washed over me. I had always thought that the HOA's power was limited to enforcing community standards, but this was a whole new level of authority. It dawned on me that they could wield the threat of eviction as a means of control, using fear to maintain compliance among residents. The concept of foreclosure loomed large in my mind, as I learned that HOAs could initiate such actions against homeowners who failed to adhere to their rules. This shocking moment forced me to confront the reality of living under an HOA's jurisdiction. It was no longer just about maintaining property values. It was about navigating a system that could strip away my rights as a homeowner. The eviction notice was not just a piece of paper. It was a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play in my community, leaving me feeling vulnerable and uncertain about my future. As I sat there, reeling from the eviction notice, a shocking twist dawned on me. I was actually Karen's landlord. The property she had been so quick to criticize was, in fact, mine. I had purchased the house a few years prior, intending to rent it out while I settled into my own home nearby. The irony of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. Here I was, facing eviction from my own property, while the very person who had been harassing me was living under my roof. The lease agreement I had with Karen was straightforward, outlining her responsibilities as a tenant and my rights as the landlord. Legally, I had the upper hand, as the agreement stipulated that I could terminate her lease for repeated violations of community rules. Yet, I had never imagined I would find myself in this position, feeling powerless against her relentless complaints. The thought of enforcing the lease felt surreal, especially since I had been the one trying to comply with her demands all along. This role reversal was not just ironic. It was a stark reminder of how power dynamics can shift unexpectedly. I had been living in fear of her authority as an HOA member, while she was oblivious to the fact that I held the ultimate power over her living situation. The realization that I could potentially evict her added a layer of complexity to our interactions, forcing me to reconsider my approach and how I would navigate this bizarre and tangled web of community politics. With the eviction notice in hand and the realization of my true role as Karen's landlord, I knew it was time to confront her face to face. I spent the night preparing, reviewing the lease agreement, and highlighting the sections that outline her responsibilities and my rights as a landlord. Armed with this knowledge, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. I rehearsed what I would say, reminding myself that I was no longer the intimidated neighbor, but rather the one holding the power in this situation. The next day, I approached Karen's house, my heart racing. When she opened the door, her expression shifted from surprise to a defensive glare. I calmly explained that I needed to discuss her lease and the ongoing complaints she had lodged against me. As I presented the lease agreement, I could see her demeanor change. The confident facade she had maintained began to crack. When I informed her that I was terminating her lease due to her repeated violations of community rules, her reaction was a mix of disbelief and anger. Karen's eyes widened, and she stammered, trying to regain her composure. "You can't do this," she exclaimed, her voice rising. But I stood firm, emphasizing the legal implications of her actions. The power dynamics had shifted dramatically. I was no longer the victim of her passive-aggressive tactics. In that moment, I felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that I was reclaiming control over my property and asserting my rights. The confrontation was not just about the lease. It was a pivotal moment that redefined our relationship and the balance of power in our community. After our confrontation, I hoped that Karen would accept the eviction notice and move on, but she had other plans. Shortly after, I received an email from the HOA, which was both alarming and infuriating. The message stated that they had received complaints from Karen regarding my decision to terminate her lease, claiming it was an act of retaliation against her for her previous complaints. It was clear that she was attempting to manipulate the HOA to her advantage, painting herself as the victim in this situation. In her email, Karen argued that I was violating community standards by evicting her, insisting that my actions were unjust and unwarranted. She even went so far as to threaten to rally other residents to her side, hoping to create a coalition against me. It was a classic tactic of hers, turning the community against anyone who dared to challenge her authority. However, I knew my legal standing was solid. The lease agreement clearly outlined her responsibilities, and her repeated violations provided me with the grounds to terminate her lease. I had documented evidence of her complaints and my attempts to comply with her demands, which only strengthened my position. While Karen tried to twist the narrative to suit her needs, I remained confident in my rights as a landlord. I understood that her retaliatory actions were merely a desperate attempt to regain control, but I was prepared to stand my ground. The battle was far from over, and I was ready to defend my legal rights against her manipulative tactics. As tensions escalated, Karen's retaliatory tactics took a surprising turn when she decided to involve the police. One afternoon, I was startled by a knock at my door, only to find two police officers standing on my porch. They explained that they had received a call from Karen, who claimed I was harassing her and violating her rights as a tenant. I felt a mix of disbelief and frustration, but I knew I had to remain calm and composed. After inviting the officers inside, I presented them with the eviction notice and the lease agreement, clearly outlining my legal rights as her landlord. The officers reviewed the documents and listened attentively as I explained the situation, detailing Karen's history of complaints and her attempts to manipulate the HOA. Their findings were clear. I had acted within my legal rights, and there was no evidence of harassment on my part. The police officers reassured me that they would speak with Karen to clarify the situation. This intervention had a noticeable impact on her. I could see the shift in her demeanor when the officers left. The authoritative presence of law enforcement seemed to deflate her bravado, and she realized that her attempts to paint me as the villain were falling flat. The police made it clear that I was within my rights, which not only validated my actions but also served as a wake-up call for Karen. The intervention marked a turning point, as it became evident that her manipulative tactics would no longer hold sway in our community. The day of the eviction arrived, and I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation as I prepared for what was about to unfold. The sheriff's department had scheduled the eviction for 10 a.m., and I arrived early to ensure everything was in order. As the officers pulled up, I could see the apprehension on their faces, knowing that evictions can often lead to heightened emotions. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was simply enforcing my legal rights as a landlord. When the sheriff's deputies approached Karen's home, I could see her through the window, pacing back and forth. As they knocked on the door, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Karen opened the door, and the moment she realized what was happening, her composure shattered. She began to cry, pleading with the officers to reconsider, claiming that she had nowhere else to go. It was heartbreaking to witness her emotional breakdown, but I also felt a sense of resolve. This was the culmination of a long and tumultuous battle, and I had to stay focused on the finality of the eviction. As the deputies explained the process to her, I could see the weight of reality settling in. The implications of the eviction were profound. It meant that Karen would have to leave the home she had occupied for years. It marked the end of her reign of intimidation over me. The officers began to assist her in gathering her belongings, and as I watched the process unfold, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. This chapter was closing, and I knew it was time for both of us to move on. As we wrap up this journey of navigating the challenges posed by Karen and the HOA, it's essential to reflect on the key points we've covered. From the initial encounter with Karen, the self-appointed HOA dictator, to the shocking moment of receiving an eviction notice, we've explored the complexities of community dynamics and the importance of understanding your property rights. We've seen how Karen's passive-aggressive tactics escalated into a battle for control, ultimately leading to police involvement and the final eviction process. This experience underscores the critical importance of knowing your rights as a homeowner and being aware of community laws. Empowering yourself with this knowledge can help you navigate conflicts more effectively and ensure that you're not taken advantage of by those who may misuse their authority. If you found this video insightful, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel for more content on navigating community living and property rights. Don't forget to like this video and share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you faced a difficult neighbor or an overreaching HOA? Your stories can help others who might be going through similar situations. Let's create a supportive community where we can learn from each other and share strategies for overcoming these challenges. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts and experiences.